This revolting attack a sign that anti-Trump hysteria is fueling violence? Does it stand for anything larger? And is the national media downplaying its existence? We're joined now by nationally syndicated radio talk show host Richard Fowler. Richard, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Tucker.
So I was interested to see this morning that the New York Times This Week in Hate feature had no mention of this story. Why would that be?
I don't know. I'm not an editor of the New York Times. I think that this story is...
Why did the Washington Post bury it? Why did the Boston Globe bury it?
I don't work at either of those sort of publications, but I will say this. I think this is a hate crime. I'm happy that the new attorney, the new Cook County prosecutor charged these people with this, and it's wrong. And I think what we need to now focus on, whether it's black or white or gay or straight, is making sure that we continue to have hate crime laws like this throughout the country that protect people like this individual that was brutalized by those four maniacs.
Well, I don't believe in hate crimes laws because I don't think you should prosecute people based on their thoughts. But I do believe
So you don't think this is a hate crime?
I think hate was involved, as it often is in crimes. I'm not defending this crime. I'm merely saying it's a separate category. Hate crimes devalue the idea of equality under the law. So I'm opposed to them. But I'm also opposed to lying and downplaying something that is obvious. And it's clear that this man's race and his political position played a role.
Absolutely, which is
in
why
the torment that he endured. Well, and that's not at all clear from the accounts that were prevalent today. The Associated Press, in its first account of the story, didn't mention the racial and political angles of the story. I wonder what that is.
I don't know. I don't work for the Associated Press. I think what we can't say here. What I can say here is that the charges came down from the prosecutor, which is the final arbiter. No journalist is an arbiter of this case.
Right.
The prosecutor is, and eventually a jury of these four individuals' peers, and those came down and said this was a hate crime. It was fueled by race. It was fueled by ideology, and that's why we stronger hate crimes in this country to prevent incidents like this and incidents that go the opposite direction.
So we can have the government dividing our thoughts and prosecuting.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
But here's the point I'm making. When a sensational crime like this occurs, the press is very quick, and people on television are very quick. Instantaneously, they draw massive conclusions. They extrapolate from it, and they say this is a national trend. When that lunatic shut up the black church in the South, Dylan Roof, we had a national conversation on white racism. Now, I'm not against such a national conversation, but if you're going to extrapolate from something like that, why the instantaneous downplaying of this as four crazy people?
I don't think,
and an isolated disabled man.
No, I don't think. I don't think anybody's isolating this at all. I think if you look at the reporting that we've seen today, if you look at people just reporting the facts, which is this individual was charged with a hate crime, which means this prosecutor, based upon the standards for a hate crime in the state of Illinois, thought that these four individuals were in violation of a hate crime, just like Dylan Roof, according to the statutes in South Carolina, were in violation of a hate crime. That's for prosecutors to decide, not for journalists.
Well, but we also draw conclusions from events. That's part of our job here in the commentariat. Simone Sanders, a Democratic strategist in CNN you might know, said this, quote, "This is not a hate crime. Hate crimes are because of a person's racial ethnicity, religion, gender, or disability. It isn't your political leanings because someone doesn't like your political leanings."
I disagree with Simone.
Okay. You had Don Lemon saying, I don't think it's evil. I don't think it's evil. I think these are young people, and I think they just had bad home training.
Last night on the Kelly Files, I called this a hate crime. I was probably one of the first Democratic commentators to do so because it's a hate crime. It's a hate crime. It's wrong. It's vile. It's disgusting. And what this should cause us to do, Tucker, is it should cause all of our Americans, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Jewish, Muslim, to say, we are moving into a new presidency. How do we come to the table? Because this is not America, right? I would argue, this is not America as a Tulsa, Oklahoma shooting where that man was shot down by the police officer. How do we come together and have a conversation about making our country better? How do we have a conversation about looking beyond race, looking beyond gender, looking beyond realizing that we're all hardworking Americans?
You know the truth, which is you walk into a certain neighborhood, you're the wrong color, and you're liable to get in trouble, okay? That is just true. I know it firsthand. So you can't say that out loud in most venues because it doesn't fit a pre-prescribed narrative.
But that's part of the problem. You need to have these conversations,
okay,
right?
Good.
So when I go to Friendship Heights, which is in the D.C. area, or any high-end boutique, and I'm followed around by a sales clerk because I happen to be African American, it's the same as you going and getting in trouble in a black neighborhood. We have to have these conversations in order for us to break the stigma down. But so when it happens to me, I go to the manager and say, you know, your clerk is following me. I'm in here to make a purchase. This is wrong, and we need to work on fixing it.
A man called Colin Borchers from the Washington Post wrote this, and I think it sort of sums up perfectly the attitude from the left here. If the attackers had been white and the victim had been black, the incident would have, of course, conjured America's ugly history of white mobs committing violence against black people. There's no parallel history of the reverse happening or anything remotely approaching the same scale. Now, that may be right on the merits, but it is an obvious attempt to downplay the significance of this because what's at stake, as you know, is victim status. And the idea that a Trump supporter might be a victim of a crime based on
He
his
is a
political
victim
belief.
of a crime.
Okay, but nobody wants to give up
The
victimhood
prosecutor,
status here.
the prosecutor is very clear in her
Then why are
determination.
all these liberals
And I think,
trying to say that this is just one isolated example when you've seen time and again?
You cannot. Here's the problem. This is not. I would argue that a hate crime is a hate crime. It's not. It doesn't have a political tilt to it. Dylan Ruth. We don't blame Republicans for Dylan Ruth. No, and we shouldn't blame Democrats for these four.
Are you joking?
I never blamed Republicans.
Well, good
for
for
Dylan
you.
Ruth.
I'm glad to have one reasonable person on this show.
And I think there's very people. Dylan Ruth is a rage maniac racist.
Were you in
and
this
so are
country
these
when
four
that happened?
individuals.
I mean, but by the way, let me just say, I agree with what you're saying.
Right.
But what I disagree with is your unwillingness to acknowledge what's been happening for the past 3 or 4 years in this country. There's a mass shooting that fits a prescribed media narrative, and all of a sudden everyone
I think, let's be very
supports
clear.
Trump or is white is responsible.
Let's be very clear. So after the Dylan Ruth case, there was a campaign to take down the Confederate flag from flying over South Carolina, which was the right thing to do. And the governor, Republican governor,
they banned the Dukes of Hazzard from television, as if every Southerner or every person who liked to watch the Dukes of Hazzard was implicated in a crime.
It has everything to do. No. That's two different conversations. I think what the Dylan Ruth incident brought to light was the fact.
They did that after Dylan Ruth.
Well, let me make the point. Well, after the Dylan Ruth incident, what brought to light the fact that in South Carolina, the Confederate flag flies over the Capitol. Both Democrats and Republicans in South Carolina agreed it was a bad idea. Waving the Confederate flag, which is the flag that stands for racism, bigotry, and hatred, is wrong.
If that had something to do, look, it's demagoguery that tries to tie people who are not responsible for a specific crime to. In my mind,
yes,
they banned the Dukes of Hazzard from television.
But we're having a conversation about four individuals who committed a hate crime and the Confederate flag.
Just apply the same standard.
I have
to all crimes.
I absolutely have. Okay. But you can't lump the whole party in with it. That's the argument I'm making. It's a hate crime. It's wrong. It's disgusting. It shouldn't happen. There should be a time to bring our country together.
You're not being honest, Richard.
I'm being absolutely honest. How are you going to tell me what standard I'm applying?
We're out of time.
Good to see you, Tom.
Nice to see you, Richard. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Top U.S. intelligence officials visited Capitol Hill today, where they reiterated their belief that the Russian government actively meddled in the U.S. election. Here's some highlights from today's testimony.
Every American should be alarmed by Russia's attacks on our nation.
The hacking was only one part of it.
In the aftermath of an unprecedented attack on our democracy.
It also entailed classical propaganda, disinformation, fake news.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time now not to throw pebbles, but to throw rocks. Putin's up to no good, and he better be stopped.
Well, Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is covering this story at the Capitol tonight, and she joins us from there. Catherine, what's going on?
Well, thank you, Tucker. Really, the bottom line is that the witnesses testified that they're more confident today than they were back in October that this was Russian interference, that it came from the highest levels of the government. But no one blamed Vladimir Putin by name, and no one said that this was done to help Donald Trump win and to make sure Hillary Clinton lost. They did testify that it was a multifaceted campaign that involved the theft of the emails from the DNC and the Clinton campaign, as well as disinformation, as well as fake news. But they also testified that they never found any evidence that the voting on the ballots was changed in any way, and they really couldn't speak to the impact on public opinion and whether that influenced how they voted at the end of the day. Now, there's several reports here. We've got this classified report that went to the president today. This will also be briefed to Congress, and then the president-elect will get his briefing tomorrow. And then early next week, we believe Monday, based on our reporting, there will be an unclassified report that's available to the public. And the witnesses testified today. They're going to try and be very forward-leaning in providing a lot of detail about who exactly was pulling the strings on this thing and what their motivation and intent was, Tucker.
So what is the significance of, if any, Catherine, of the timing here?
Look, I've been covering this area for more than a decade, and it's always important to look at the timing of events. You know from working in this town, when there's a big rollout of information, this tends to be almost choreographed by the party that's in power. And we asked the White House today, if the report was just final this week, how was it that the administration imposed sanctions on Russia last week and then expelled 35 Russian diplomats if they didn't have the final report? And what they said is that they wanted a forceful response, and they didn't need more information to do that. But it begs the question, what does a forceful response mean when the hacking is well documented and it began over a year ago, Tucker?
Right. That's the question right there. Catherine, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Remnants of a neo-fascist movement that he leads in this country after this election.
He unleashed feelings of racism, of hostility, of sexism, of division that are now out there.
Donald Trump provoking fresh outrage. This time, the Republican frontrunner is accused of mocking a reporter who has a physical disability.
Now the Republican nominee is facing new scrutiny tonight as several women come forward claiming they are victims of his sexual advances.
Right now in American media, they're trying to agitate and to create violence against anybody who supports Trump or even against anybody who is white. Remember that video the guy was saying, F white people, F white people. It was hatred in his heart, and the media tried not to even report on it in America, but it became so big on social media they had no choice.
2017 has only just been rung in, but already leading company bosses in the UK have made more money in the first 3 working days of the year than the average Briton does for the next 12 months. A think tank's released the figures showing a striking pay gap between high-ranking CEOs and average employees. RT's Anastasia Churkina investigates.
Excited about a bit of a pay rise this year? Well, you must have not heard about Fat Cat Wednesday. Here in the UK, top CEOs are said to have made more money by lunchtime on January 4th than the average worker will in the whole entire year. That's right, in just 2.5 work days. How can this even be, you ask? Well, an average FTSE 100 boss is estimated to enjoy a hefty £1,000 per hour, while the average UK salary is just a tad over £28,000 a year. So the math is simple.
Pay them less and pay everyone else a bit more. It's so easy. I don't know how it happens to be like this.
People should be satisfied with just enough. But unfortunately, the world today is all greed. All greed.
We could go on cruises.
Spending the money.
Could go on cruises.
Yes, we could, couldn't we? Could go on cruises.
We go on cruises now.
While we're slaving our ass off, them lot are just sitting in the office, just signing off documents and getting a lot of money.
Groups that analyze the paychecks here in the UK also found that bosses typically make 129 times more than their employees, 400 times more than the minimum wage worker, 172 times more than a nurse, and 145 times more than a teacher. So how's that for an income gap?
Some of us are at the bottom, and the rest are stepping on us to go to the top.
It'd be nice to be in that position, wouldn't it?
Would it?
It'd be nice if you were in the right side of it, yeah.
Well, it's not right, is it? It's not... No, it's definitely not right. It shouldn't be.
It's just crazy. I mean, it is crazy. It's like... the world has gone mad, I do think so.
The public is waiting for the government to make their promises of narrowing the income gap a reality, which for now seems nothing more but a utopian dream. Anastasia Churkina, RT, London.
Up next, Sophie Shepard talks to football legend Carlos Puyol of FC Barcelona.